grandmother was a pianist, even though she didn't play professionally. She had a great love of culture and arts, and I really feel like I inherited a lot of that from her. And I don't know, I was just really drawn to it. And when I had the opportunity to learn so much as a part of the choir and then be in theater, I just felt like these are people that are speaking a language that really resonates with me. Again, not knowing it was a career, it was just helped me expressing things about myself, and also just dreaming and imagining and experiencing worlds that I found fascinating. I went to Yale partly. I mean, I visited. I was like, oh, this seems cool. But I partly also went because people were like, oh, you don't want to go to Yale. That's the gay Ivy. And I was like, oh, thanks. That's all I need to know. That's that. Now I'll go. Okay, great. Like, people were trying to say it as a bad thing, but I was like, great. You've narrowed it down for me. Uh, I mean, one, I had really good grades because, like, partly because I genuinely loved learning. That's like, I really, to me, my fantasy when I was a kid was I wish I could stop time so that I could read more books and catch up, because there's just so much to learn. And this is before the internet. So, but like, I genuinely love learning. Like, I just started adult piano lessons. I'm taking swim lessons. I I started learning Spanish in my 40s. Like, I just love it. I just think it's so interesting. So I I genuinely think I was a fit for what Yale was looking for, because what I wanted to be was the classic well-rounded person. I wanted to learn about philosophy. I wanted to learn about art. I wanted to learn about literature. I wanted to learn about science. Like, I really genuinely was interested in those things, and I think they saw that in me, that I was, like, no joke, wanted to learn. And I think what they are looking for from their side is what are you going to add to our campus? What are you, it's not what can Yale give you, it's what can you give Yale or any college that you're applying for. So that's what I would think about when you're applying to college, is what are you bringing them in terms of your experience, your passion, your background, your willingness to contribute to the life at that campus. Again, I mean, this might, I think, be a product of the time that I was raised, but like, my parents didn't know where I was applying. They didn't help me with any of my applications. I just did it all myself with no plan. I was just like, well, I get good grades, and I guess people who get good grades apply to these Ivy League schools. So, and some of my friends were, so that's what I did. I don't recommend that at all. Like, I really wish, like, someone had sat me down and gave me some SAT prep classes and talked to me about, your top tier schools and then your safety schools. Like, I had none of that. I was just, yeah. So I arrived at Yale completely unprepared. It was a huge culture shock. One, I think moving from inner city Cleveland to University Heights already, like, I was like, oh, there's all these, like, that helped me, like, sort of be a little more resilient about just meeting different kinds of people and stuff like that. But well, yeah, if I hadn't met the people I met at Yale, I would never have even dreamed of moving to New York. Like, these are things that I discovered amongst the people that I was hanging around with. And I just was kind of picking it up in the atmosphere around me. But that's also what I did at Heights. Like, when I started at Heights, I wasn't thinking I'm going to be in the choir. I was just, like, taking just regular classes, honors classes, but I never thought of being in the choir until people in my class were talking about the choir and things like that. So I was lucky to be influenced by good friends. And I think one thing that was kind of in the back of my mind was my I like that you want to hang out with good people. That was very important to me in retrospect, but even at the time, I know I felt like I don't want to hang out. I mean, I was like a nerdy bookworm, but I really feel like the temperature of the whole group you're in is what helps determine kind of where you are, like who you're vibing with. So you want to really try to vibe with people who are going in a direction that is going to uplift you. And also because in LA, because LA is a big city, New York's a big city, and you can get off the bus and be like, hey, I'm in LA, and you hang out with a bad crowd, you are just flushed down the drain, just right out. Like, you have to really be careful who you're hanging out with. And I think that's important in your whole life is you really have, like, you have to have friends who are gonna uplift you.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I will say that one thing I did was I absolutely refused to look at the odds because it was too overwhelming for me. Like if I thought, oh, you have a 0.001% chance of getting, like I would have been paralyzed. So for better or worse, I was just like, I won't look at the odds. But also, um, it has to hopefully really feed something in you. Like you have to want to do it, and then you have to really work at whatever it is because there's so many people. I mean, I can't tell you over the years how many people you meet who are like, oh, I want to be a writer. Can I pick your brain about how to be a writer and be in TV? And you go and you talk to them and you give them advice, but then they're not writing anything. They're not reading the rules of screenwriting or TV writing. They're not attending seminars or getting better. They're not doing all of the groundwork. So I feel like whatever career you want to go into, even if you, especially if you don't have parental support, then it's all on you to do the groundwork. You have to know, you have to just throw yourself into it and um, just not expect that it will happen. Like by the time I finally got to be a writer trainee, I had a whole bunch of spec scripts that people could read. I knew all the formatting of TV. I knew all the classics. I had seen everything. I could talk about everything. Like I was ready to be there. You can't, so you have to do, in any field, you have to do a lot of work, but especially if you don't have kind of the support of your family, that means you're going to have to go it alone, which means you're going to have to work really, really, really hard. And like I said, there was a point when I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. I think it might not be. And I mean, I can't tell you. I think I've had 2 or 3 farewell tours where I call up my friends and I'm like, well, I gave it a good shot, but I don't think it's gonna. I think this is the end of the line. So I just want you to know, whatever. Like TV is not a secure profession, and there are definitely days when I'm like, I should have joined the post office like my mom said, because by now I'd have a pension and like there are definitely days when I'm like, maybe I should have done that because it's hard. If you're in a unstable profession, it's hard. And it wasn't until I would say maybe, I mean, I got to LA in 1999. Oh, get your money right. That's what I'm also going to say. You've got to learn a lot of creative people. I grew up thinking, oh, I'm creative. I don't know about money. I don't care about money. I don't have to think about these things. Completely wrong. Like, if you're going to be in a kind of unstable profession without the support of your family, you've got to be the one to confront how is money going to operate in your life. You need a backup plan. I didn't have a backup plan, but I I cornered the accountant at one of my shows, and I was just like, can you explain money to me? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how it's happening. I'm afraid to talk about it. It gives me like, I get my breath gets really tight when I think about money. I'm also in therapy. But like I cornered this accountant and I begged him. And I mean, over the course of 2 solid years, I would meet with him like every other month, and he would explain something about money to me until I was able to take that on and be like, okay, now I've got to have an emergency fund because it's an unstable business. So that means I've got to have at least a year and a half of income saved up to get me through the lean times. And, you know, I've got to like do my own pension because like they're just whatever. I had to learn about money. And especially in like there's a lot of creative fields where people think you talking about money is good. If you can't talk about it, find someone who can. But like especially if you're trying to make it a profession, because TV is still a business. And I listened in the writer's room. I listen to people talk about money. Like a lot of discussion in the writer's rooms is like mortgage rates and interest rates and this and that. And I mean, I was just like, what? Huh? So I would say you have to do a lot of preparatory work, and you've got to make sure that you have the resources to sustain yourself. How old am I today? Like I say, it's this is just me. There's lots of people who are different, but I think every job is going to be my last. Like, I'm like, well, I got another job, but I don't know if I'm going to get another one. So then I'm constantly like, I'm always like, how am I going to get my next job? What can I do? Who do I need to be helping? What do I need to work on to get my next job? Because there is no point, I think. I mean, I suppose if I had been on the Big Bang Theory for 20 years and then had an overall deal at Warner Brothers, I might feel more secure. But I have a friend who is a millionaire, super successful, but messed up his money. And so is constantly working just to pay back taxes and what kind, so I don't know if there is a point for me working on that in therapy. I will say, like, I am seriously, like, really honestly, my therapist, like, you need to write down all of your accomplishments. You've done a lot of things, but you don't acknowledge it. And I think that's partly because of, she said it's partly because of trauma from, I have different little traumas. We all do. But your brain, the science now is that your brain has a bias toward negativity for survival. Like it's easier to be suspicious of that rustle in the woods because whatever it is not going to kill you than it is to be like, oh, it's probably fine. And then it's a tiger. So you have a bias toward negativity, and you have to work actively towards a reasonable positivity. I mean, there are people, I also meet a lot of people who are just like, oh, I'm definitely going to make it. And you read their work, you're like, this is trash. And then you try and help them, and then they won't take your notes. You're like, all right, well, good luck. So you don't want to be completely unrealistic. I hope that answered your question. Oh, I will say that this is definitely, like, I'm doing a mentorship program with the WGA, and this is what I tell these, they're called baby writers. When you first start, even you could be old and be a baby writer, but like, if you don't acknowledge the small things along the way, you're never going to acknowledge it. Because like One Day at a Time got canceled this summer, so I'm out of a job, and so I was up for jobs on Blackish, The Goldbergs, Grey's Anatomy, all these shows. I got rejected from all of them, but it was the highest level I'd ever been rejected. I was like, I'm getting rejected from the A-list now. And I really had to think about that. Like, just being up at bat is hard in this industry. So whatever you're doing, you do have to, without being, a narcissist, you do have to keep track of, I do get up and work hard. I do put in the effort. I do try, like, to help you feel better about. That's my advice. Yeah, I mean the cost of living. Well, I mean, if you're talking about your college, hopefully you'll be able to live on campus for at least part of it. But yeah, like apartments and things like that are very, very expensive. And if someone's not paying for it, you may have student loans. And that, like, my parents would not pay for me. They would not pay their parental portion of my financial aid package when I was at Yale. So I had to borrow so much money. It was onerous and was like a big cloud over my life for a long time, but also partly because I wouldn't face it and deal with it. So it just got worse and worse and worse. Um, but so, yeah, the cost of living is high, but at least your first year, if you're on campus, then that's going to be taken care of. Um, Big issue in Los Angeles specifically is like there's a big movement among like people to get rid of non-paid internships, because non-paid internships mean that only wealthy people can do internships. And even being like an assistant, if the assistant doesn't pay, being an assistant doesn't pay a livable wage, that means only wealthy people can be assistants. So there's actually a really big movement right now in Los Angeles called Pay Up Hollywood, Raise the Percentage, and there's other movements like that to make sure that assistants get paid more. Like this is what you're addressing is an ongoing problem, and people are saying like, oh, we want to increase diversity, but if only wealthy people, and wealth is racially stratified, if only wealthy people can be these entry level jobs, then you're not going to get diversity. So that's an issue, and that's what people are addressing now, but it's not easy. I did pay them off eventually. That's all I can say. Once I did start paying attention to them. Um, I mean, I probably would still be paying them off if I was just paying them minimum, but the interest rate on them was also very high. And so the accountant that I worked with was like, when you're talking about your money and stuff, you need to look at, if you have loans, pay off the loan that is the highest interest rate first, and then work your way down. So like credit cards usually are super high interest rates. So he was like, pay off those credit card bills every month, because by doing that, you're making 20% if your interest rate is 20%. So anyway, my student loans were very high. So he was just like, just try and pay those off. And like my furniture is from IKEA or Ashley. Like I'm cheap. I'm just going to say it. Like my car is old because I need to have money in the bank to survive. So also, I am a very anxious person, and nothing makes me feel more secure than driving in my completely paid off old car. I don't have a car note, also means my insurance is less. And I just am like, if something happens to this car, it's worth $2. It doesn't matter. Like I'm relieved. I have the stress of finances off my head. Like a lot of people are constantly trying to be in debt and have things because they think a credit card is cash, and they think that having a new car is what's gonna make them feel secure. But what makes me feel secure is money in the bank. Okay, so Ant Farm was a show about kids with special talents, and one of them was China Ann McClain, who her talent was music. So my idea for the episode was she's like struggling because I have anxiety, so I write stories about people with anxiety. So she was like super anxious because she was doing this report for Black History. She's like, what do I say, and how do I even say what is Black history? And she's so upset, and she's trying to figure it out, and she like goes into her little recording booth with all of her books to try and figure out like what she's going to do, and she falls asleep. And then she wakes up, and first she's Ella Fitzgerald in the Cotton Club confronting the segregation in the Cotton Club. And then she falls asleep again, and she wakes up, and she's Aretha Franklin saying to her father she doesn't want to just sing in the church, she wants to sing pop soul music as well. And then she falls asleep, and then she wakes up again, and she's Janet Jackson saying she wants to get out of the shadow of her brother and be her own person. So that was the episode, and it turned out really well. So for that, I won. This is, for me, the most meaningful one. It's the Writers Guild Award. So it's given by people in the Writers Guild. It's only writers vote on it. So to me, that was pretty exciting. And then this is the NAACP Image Award for that episode. And I will say that I was the first person who was openly gay in accepting their NAACP Image Award.
Wow, that's amazing.
And this is from the last show I was on, because I have these trophies back here. So then the last show I was on, they gave me a trophy for having the best trophies, and that's what this is. Even though it's trite, it is. You have to find a way to be happy as you're going along and doing the work, and be happy with the person that you're trying to be now, and not think that something at some point in the future is going to magically make a big difference and change your life. You have to be the one changing your life all the way along. And that's something I'm very much still working on, but I very much believe that.